Hello, I am playing Dagon. It's scary. Okay, it looks kind of scary actually. I thought it was gonna be a visual novel game. I am a little fearful. I'm turning off motion blur. What do we got here? Text settings. Let's start. Dagon is a faithful interactive adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's work, focused on story and atmosphere. You will not find difficult choices, action sequences, or inventory management here, and movement is limited to progressing through locations along with the plot. That's good. Sometimes you just need a good story, you know?
I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
During the game, encounter interactive elements. Some of them will allow you to continue. Others reveal interesting facts about the original short story, historical background, and the author. Some of the trivia is hidden. In order to find these secrets, focus your eyes and look for the eldest sign. Just right-click. Lovecraft's letter. As the letters, my case is peculiar. I write such things exactly as easily and as rapidly as I would utter the same topics in conversation. Indeed, epistolary expression is with me largely replacing conversation. As my condition of nervous prostration becomes more and more acute, I cannot bear to talk much now, and I am becoming as silent as the spectator himself. My loquacity, that doesn't sound right. Loquacity? It's pronounced loquacious. Loquacity sounds better, though. Extends itself on paper. H.P. Lovecraft to Reinhard Kleiner, December 23rd, 1917. Throughout his life, Lovecraft penned around 100,000 letters to his friends and fans, out of which about 10% survive to this day. But his tendency to endless correspondence was a relatively late growth. In his youth, I scarcely did any letter writing. Thanking anybody for a present was so much of an ordeal, and I'd rather have written a 250-line pastoral on 20-page treatise on the rings of Saturn. Lovecraft would often skip meals to afford postage. Collections of his correspondence have been published in various books, and selected letters can be found online. Some readers consider them his most important legacy. That looks like it. Uh-huh. Not much else to do here.
Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below.
Oh no.
Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death.
Oh god. Cursed with knowledge. Morphine. Entered its use in the 19th century, was routinely administered to treat severe pain during the American Civil War. Also sold without restriction until 1914, or became more popular at the hypodermic syringe around 1854. Frederick Serturner, oh, I see, makes things a lot faster if you can go directly to the bloodstream. First isolated the substance, originally named it morphium after Morpheus, the great god associated with dreams. At the time when Dagon was published, morphine abuse, known as soldier's disease, already posed a big problem in the US. USA! USA! So we're writing a letter?
It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider.
Okay. Craft in the Great War. This probably breaks out the pacing, but it's interesting. Dagon was written around a month after the U.S. entered World War One. Lovecraft actually interested in its course. Composed many poems in which it gave encouragement to soldiers and commented on the events unfolding in Europe. Tried to enlist in the army, which he mentioned as one of the letters to. Some time ago, impressed by my entire uselessness in the world, I resolved to attempt enlistment despite my almost invalid condition. I argued that if I chose a regiment soon to depart for France, my sheer nervous force, which is not inconsiderable, might sustain me till a bullet or a piece of shrapnel could more conclusively and effectively dispose of me. But even though he passed the physical exam, his mother prevented him from going to war. She was threatened to go to any lengths, legal or otherwise, if I do not reveal all the ills which unfit me for the army. I am Providence, the life and time of Lovecraft. Okay. Okay. Uh-oh. So that's where the war comes in.
The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation.
That's interesting. You know, people who, soldiers, like, Tolkien would write about the horrors of war, in a way, in his books, you know, drawing from real life inspiration and stuff. So you can see the influence that the war has had on the setting of the story.
So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
The Huns, Central Asian nomads, established a dominion in Europe and invaded the Roman Empire in the 5th century AD. Brutal, deadly warriors and masters of quick raids who would develop powerful composite bows, lassos, and early siege weapons. During the First World War, the British used the word Hun as a synonym for Germans. So in this case, they're talking about the Germans in order to emphasize their brutality. I see. Wow, they're being racist. However, the term originated from the German Emperor Wilhelm II, gave a speech to his troops where they embarked to China. Should you encounter the enemy, he will be defeated. No quarter will be given. Prisoner will not be taken. Whoever falls into your hands is forfeited. Just as 1,000 years ago the Huns under their King Attila made a name for themselves, one that even today makes them seem mighty in history and legend. May the name German be affirmed by you in such a way in China that no Chinese will ever again dare to look cross-eyed at a German. The refusal to take prisoners was a clear breach of the laws and customs of war adopted during the First Hague Convention of 1899. They were brutal. Okay.
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time.
Okay, so he escaped on a boat because there weren't a lot of people here? Any elder signs? No.
When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings.
Lost at sea. Ooh, that is bright.
Never
Ouch.
a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
anything aboard. Oh. No. I thought maybe they'd give us a little, say like, oh, the stars are right this time. You could figure it out that you're in the southern atmosphere. Ouch. Let's just move on.
The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land.
The Return to Short Story. Dagon was written in 1917, published in 1919 in The Vagrant, an amateur magazine featured on the supernatural. The story is the first of his that introduced an element from the Cthulhu mythos. Dagon itself, a pagan cult worshipping Dagon, later appeared in The Shadow over Innsmouth, one of Lovecraft's most popular works. 1970s also, he wrote The Tomb, a story about Jervis Dudley, a daydreamer who discovered a mysterious mausoleum in the woods by his house and became obsessed with it. If I found a mysterious mausoleum in the woods by my house, I would also be obsessed with it. Or incredibly fearful. I would bring a buddy, for sure. Or maybe two. Or a platoon of men. These two works marked Lovecraft's return to short stories, writing after he burned most of his attempts in the genre 9 years prior, and decided to concentrate on poetry. Lovecraft stated that it was his friend William Paul Cook, a literary publisher and critic, who convinced him to start writing weird fiction again. Alright, Cook. Go.
But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began
we're on
to
our
despair
back.
in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue. The change happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know, for my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
Okay, what? What happened?
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see.
Ugh. You're on this black sludge?
And in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished. For there was in the air, and in the rotting soil, a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish, and of other, less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain.
Unending plain. The whole ocean.
Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing and nothing in sight save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
Oh yeah, it's not like day. It's like fake day. Origins of Dagon. Inspired by Fishhead, a short novel by Ivan S. Cobb about unnatural affinities between a hybrid idiot and a strange fish of an isolated lake. And Lovecraft's dream about a strange island emerging from the ocean and him crawling in the ooze that covered its surface. I dreamed that the whole hideous crawl, and you could feel the ooze sucking me down. Lovecraft's interest in the topic stemmed from his aversion to fish and sea smell. In his own words, I have hated fish and feared the sea, and everything connected with it since I was 2 years old. Could not recall what early experience gave me such a profound and lasting aversion to the sea and seafood. Okay. Ew, the noises! Disgusting.
As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths.
So he's saying that the bottom of the ocean is this.
So great was the
And it got
extent of
kicked
the new
up
land
by
which
some
had risen
tectonic
beneath me
plate.
that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might.
And there's miles of
Nor
this
were
stuff.
there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things.
And no birds. Stuff not meant to be eaten. Oh. Volcanic islands. Volcanic eruptions sometimes result in the creation of islands. Most of them transient and erode after some time, but some prove permanent. The floating pumice, porous rock created from when superheated pressurized rock is ejected from a volcano, can move across long distances and transport barnacle and macroalgae that cling to it. Has been one rafts of pumice created during the eruption of a volcano near Tonga, Polynesia, eventually reach Australia.
For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time.
Oh.
That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue.
It's crazy. An elder sign around here? Hey, is there an elder sign? Nope, no elder sign.
On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal.
Nope, nothing in the sky for me to click on. It's so gross.
All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert.
What are these things? Oh my god, a whale. Not even a whale fall. It got
That
kicked
night,
up.
I encamped, and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it.
So, of course, he's gonna go towards the big mountain. I get it. The creator of the Cthulhu mythos in the fictional underwater city of Relea was convinced that life could not exist at the bottom of the ocean because the water pressure would make it uninhabitable. Today we know that the darkest depths of the ocean are home to many peculiar organisms. The deepest dwelling fish we've discovered so far, the Mariana snailfish, can live about 8,000 meters, more than 26,000 feet below the ocean's surface, in never-ending darkness and at a hellishly crushing pressure, hundreds of times stronger than those found at sea level. Upon glancing at the modern photos of deep sea creatures, such as the anglerfish, the fangtooth, or the viperfish, and their truly Lovecraftian characteristics, it's hard not to find some irony in this. Yeah.
By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than
4
it had
days.
appeared from a distance. An intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill.
On like a
I know
shell
not
or
why
something,
my
or
dreams were so wild that night.
might be the smell.
But ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more.
Where did the mountain go?
Such visions as I had experienced
Oh,
were
this is a
too
dream.
much for me to endure again.
Where is it?
And in the glow of the moon I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence.
That's interesting. Oh, Elder Sign. The Loner. Contrary to popular opinions, Lovecraft was not an ever-frowning, eccentric, grumpy loner. He considered himself to be a person who appreciated humor. Moreover, he would often meet with friends in his apartment, or at various cafes in Brooklyn and Manhattan. At times, his social life wait, why did I make him British? His social life was so intensive, his work would suffer for months. There was a point when he finally decided he needed to put an end to daily meetings and loitering in New York cafeterias and resorted to hiding at home. That is the life, though. That is the life. He just goes out to meet people daily and just chill out at the cafe. Hiding at home and reading with the main room light turned off, pretending he wasn't there whenever a friend knocked on his door. He also had another method of deterring his guests, which involved greeting them in a bathrobe, with an unmade bed visible in the background and piles of paper scattered across the floor. Interesting. It was an act.
I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me. But I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon, whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine. I felt myself on the edge of the world.
It's just blackness.
Peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night.
You know, the tallest mountains are underwater.
Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness.
Because, you know, back then in like Dante's Inferno and stuff, the deepest reaches of hell, it wasn't like hot and fiery. It was darkness.
As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined.
Okay.
Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent.
It's gonna go down there?
Whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual.
Okay. Just trying to sniff out some trivia.
Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath.
What is that?
Gazing into the Stygian deeps, where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me. An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon.
What, just like an obelisk? And no elder sign. Okay, okay. We move forward.
That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself. But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature.
Yeah, it's like too square, right?
Closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express.
Even bismuth and stuff like that. That's like really geometric. This looks unnatural. Okay.
For despite its enormous magnitude and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith, whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures.
Who made the first monolith?
Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely.
I didn't see any elder sign.
The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm, and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope. Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the Cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures.
Oh, it would have been a little clever if they had a, you know, a sigil in the water. Okay.
The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books.
Oh, animals.
Consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like. Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world, but whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain. It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound.
Dagon contains many themes and storytelling methods that Lovecraft developed in his later work, such as telling the story through carvings. At the Mountains of Madness. Hey, have you guys ever watched In the Mouth of Madness? It's so good. I hate... Ooh, I was gonna spoil it. I was gonna spoil it just now. Alright, but it's good. It's good. It has one of the tropes that I hate the most, but I actually enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed my experience. Anyways, in journals and character notes, the shadow out of time, the haunter of the dark, islands emerging from the ocean, Call of Cthulhu, or fictional beings and deities based on real life and mythologies, Migo and the Whisperers in Darkness. Also considered the origin of the popular Cthulhu mythos. Some of Lovecraft's other stories also conclude in a manner similar to Dagon. Let's skip the details in order not to spoil the ending.
Plainly visible across the intervening water, on account of their enormous size, were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a doré.
I don't know what a doré is.
I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men.
They look like mermen.
Though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto, or paying homage at some monolithic shrine which appeared to be under the waves as well. Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint. grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer. They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips,
Ew.
glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seem to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background. For one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself.
So there's a huge one. Oh, Jesus.
I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size.
I would not want to meet
But
one
in a
of these.
moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe.
Yeah,
Or some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born.
Surely that's just a made-up god and not real. That would be absurd.
Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly, I saw it. With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters. Like and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares.
What the?
About which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, the while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds.
What just happened?
Mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the sloping cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little.
So he ran all the way back to the boat.
I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing.
What is happening? The sky looks crazy. It's still nighttime.
I have indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods.
Oh my god, it's gonna make this fish stink. The rotting smell of fish is going to get even worse.
When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital, brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean. In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing, nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe.
The journalist. Lovecraft was a prominent figure in the world of amateur journalism. In the 1950s, he started publishing in 1915, he started publishing his own journal called The Conservative, which includes political and social commentary, poetry, short stories, and literary criticisms written by him and other authors. Howard was a skilled wordsmith, but he also took criticism to heart, which resulted in his decision to step away from writing poetry and concentrate on weird fiction again for the first time since his teenage years. Dagon, published in 1919, is one of the short stories written during that period. In this example excerpt from The Conservative, the master of horror fiction explains his attitude towards warfare and the ideas of world peace. Why any sane human being can believe in the possibility of universal peace, and more than the Conservative can fathom. In the possibility of universal peace is more than the Conservative can fathom. Should the entire civilized world agree simultaneously to disarm, one or more nation would undoubtedly retain secret armaments, and at the proper time take advantage of their more altruistic and less astute contemporaries, in a wild career of conquest against unarmed victims. No country is, or ever can be, above warfare. until the basic impulse of human animal shall miraculously change. Wow, people don't got it in them. They got that dog in them. The atheist. Lovecraft considered himself an atheist and an absolute materialist, which he attributed partly to his early childhood interest in astronomy and science in general. In his own words, "I am indeed an absolute materialist as far as actual belief goes, with not a shred of credible credence in any form of supernaturalism, religion, spiritualism, transcendentalism, metempsychosis, or immortality. All I say is that I think it is damned unlikely that anything like a central cosmic will, a spirit world, or an eternal survival of personality exist. They are the most preposterous and unjustified of all guesses which can be made about the universe, and I am not enough of a hair-splitter to pretend that I don't disregard them as errant and negligible moonshine. In theory, I am an agnostic, but pending the appearance of radical evidence, must be classed, practically and provisionally, as an atheist." Okay, cool. In deference to Dagon, 1921, Lovecraft released a series of 3 essays, The Deference Reopens, The Deference Remains Opened, and The Final Words. A trilogy, okay? Later published in a collection called In Deference of Dagon, okay, in which he rebukes a series of criticism directed at his works, some notable quotes. "I paint what I dream, and will let the public settle the rest amongst themselves." Mr. Mundy asked the raison d'etre of Dagon. "I will give it purely and simply to reproduce a mood. Its object is the simplest in all art, portrayal. The physical horrors of war, no matter how extreme and unprecedented, hardly have a bearing of the entirely different realm of supernatural terror. Ghosts are still ghosts, and the mind can get more thrill from unrealities than from realities." Okay. Atheism, materialism, quest for the truth, and love of science. Does that mean there's one more hidden somewhere? Any more for any more? I think that is about it. Yep. Alright.
Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god.
Dagon, was the main deity of the Philistines, worshipped throughout the Middle East as an ancient god of fertility and crops. In Hebrew, the word Dagon was a common noun for grain. The rulers of Akkad, Mesopotamia, chose him as a patron saint of their war conquest. He also appeared as the judge of the dead in an Assyrian poem. An underworld... Oh wow, I have not heard of Assyria in Mesopotamia in ages. Ancient knowledge is resurfacing. Underworld prison warden. In one of the Babylonian texts, he is often taken for a fish god through the wrong interpretation of his name, as in Hebrew the word dog means fish. In H.P. Lovecraft's work, Dagon is an underwater deity ruling over the deep ones, a humanoid race with fish traits that resides in the oceans. He is worshipped by a secret cult called the Esoteric Order of Dagon. What are we trying to do here? Yeah, what are we trying to do here? How am I supposed to progress? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm looking for something. Oh, there. See any more elder signs? That's not one. Not hidden in the plants. These columns look awful suspicious. No? No? Okay. Very well.
But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries.
Hopelessly conventional. That's crazy. The marketer. Lovecraft's attempts to find a job in 1925 were influenced by advice he received from friends. Among others, he started freelancing for a marketing magazine, where he would write announcements and commercials. Feel free to judge his copywriting skills for yourself. From an old ad for Curtis Woodwork. Curtis Woodwork embraces both the unusual structural units and the cleverest contrivances of built-in or permanent furniture, such as bookcases, dressers, buffets, and cupboards. Every model is conceived and created with the purest art, ripest scholarship, and mellowest craftsmanship would energetic enterprise can command, and made to conform rigidly to the architecture of each particular type of home. The cost, considering the quality, is amazingly low, and the trademark of the individual pieces prevents any substitution by careless contractors. Wow. I'm sold. Sold. Give me Curtis's number. You know what I'm saying? August Derleth and the Cthulhu Mythos. August Derleth was an American writer and anthropologist. Anthologist, not anthropologist. He also befriended Lovecraft and published many of his works through his company, Arkham House. Although it greatly contributed to the popularization of the author's work after his death, he is surrounded by numerous controversies. Of the most questionable decisions involved introducing the good versus evil doctrine. Derleth was a devout Catholic to the Cthulhu mythos, which contrasted with Lovecraft's views of the world and his approach to cosmic horror. As a result, the author's works are often misunderstood and misinterpreted in today's culture. It is also worth noting that Lovecraft was never really interested in creating a mythology, and the term Cthulhu mythos was coined by Derleth after the author left the mortal plane. Interesting. Sorry, a little distracted for a moment. I'm back. I'm back. Okay. Oh, an elder son. The scientist. These days, the word scientist is widely accepted term, but at the time Dagon was published, it was subject to a wide debate. After the author used it in the story, critics pointed out that a man of science was a more appropriate term to deploy. He admitted, in deference of Dagon, that if Dagon were to be reprinted, he would indeed use the phrase they suggested. Scientist was coined as an analog to artist, to be used when referring to those studying different branches of science. Yet in the 19th and early 20th century, scientific researchers in Great Britain and the US were of the opinion that a man of science resembled the term man of letters, which is the only proper choice. Among other things, it was gender-specific, indicating that the science was an endeavor to be pursued by only one sex. The term scientist became more accepted after World War II, and the man of science became faded into obscurity as an old-fashioned synonym. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
It is at night, especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine, but the drug has given only transient surcease, and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave. So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men.
Lovecraft and tobacco and alcohol. He hated tobacco, even though he used to smoke when he was 12, in order to look and feel like an adult. In his correspondence with friend Reinhard Kleiner, he claims that he quit as soon as he started wearing long pants. He also had a very strong opinion about alcohol, as evidenced by his letter to Zelia Brown. As for the matter of drinking, I have never tasted intoxicating liquor, or never intend to, having a strong and aesthetic disgust at anything which blunts or coarsens the delicate natural equipoise of the evolved human intellect and imagination. Drinking excited my personal repugnance, hence I don't drink. Let the herd do what they will. I am rather in favor of prohibition. The prohibition of any one antisocial force as well as any other. Wow. These are rare prohibitionists. Elder sign. In another house where people were stirring, he asked questions about the gods and whether they danced often upon Larion. But the farmer and his wife would only make the elder sign and tell him the way of Nir and Ulthar. Elder sign is a protective symbol that can be found in various works of pop culture, usually represented by a 5-point star with an eye flame symbol in the center. For example, in games inspired by H.P. Lovecraft's writings, it is supposed to ward away all kinds of cosmic horror. However, there's a later version of the sign, created by the author's friend, writer August Derleth. In our game, we have used the original symbol, as designed by Lovecraft, in the form of 6-pointed branches, which he sometimes included in letters to his friends. I bet I missed one. That's tough. Anyways.
Often, I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm. A mere freak of fever, as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man-of-war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed, worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind. Of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium.
Oh my god. The Statue of Liberty. Lady Liberty, no!
The end is near. I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it.
No elder signs. I'm pixel hunting. Anything that could have an elder sign on
it. It shall not find me. God, that hand! The window! The window!
I was looking for an elder sign. Well, thank you for playing. Hope you enjoyed immersing yourself in our little pool of cosmic horror. We should appreciate if you took a moment to rate Dagon and check out our other games and DLCs. Now that was cool. I might check out one of those other games. This was very well written and it was very, very clean, nicely paced. That was cool. That was really cool. And I would never have read Dagon by myself. So that was really sick. Yeah, thanks for joining me. I've got a ton of these Lovecraftian games. They're not going to be as short as this. But you know, if we're interested, if I'm interested, I might just play them. You know, I've got a ton of them, and they're just collecting dust on the shelf there. You know. But yeah, okay. Thank you for watching. This is free, by the way. Hey, you can check this out, Dagon, and then maybe grab the DLC while you're at it. I haven't gotten any of them myself, but I might check it out. Anyways, thank you for hanging out with me. Take care. Bye now. Bye bye.